Hey, welcome to this episode of Happy Today podcast. My name is Pasi and joined with me today is Sami, our CEO, and a special guest, Barclay Rae. If you've ever been to an ITSM event in UK or basically elsewhere, you have most likely seen Barclay's presentation or name mentioned. He's been working in the ITSM for over 30 years with organizations like SDI, itSMF UK, and recently redeveloping ITIL with Axelos. And today he uses mixes of proven approaches, experiences, and common sense on guiding clients quickly to practical success. And he's always saying that focus is to help you deliver the best possible service to your customer. And recently, Barclay wrote an article called Watertight, not Watermelon SLAs. And today we're going to talk about that. You can find the link in the show notes, so please go and check that out. But welcome, Barclay. Finally, good to finally have you on our podcast.
Great, thank you, and it's really great to be here. And nice to speak to you both. And we'll keep the discussion going around the watertight, not watermelon.
Yeah.
SLAs.
So watermelon, something that we use, and maybe you see it somewhere behind me on the video as well. What's your definition of watermelon SLA, and kind of how did you come up with it?
It's something that just evolved a number of years ago that I started using, where it was a good way of just getting the point across that most people that I came across in IT organizations, they had something that they called an SLA. It probably was more like an SLD, a service level disagreement or non-agreement. It wasn't based on any real discussion, but it was something that they had as their targets, and generally misguidedly thought that if they achieved what was in that SLA, everything was great. So their reporting, their RAG reporting was all green, so the customers were happy, of course, but in fact they weren't most of the time, because it wasn't actually reflecting the experience or what it was like to actually deal with that organization. So the watermelon it looks like a green fruit. You cut it open and it's actually red. And that analogy has worked very well for a number of years. And I know that many people have picked up on it, and including you guys. And I think it's very successful at just pointing out to people that their SLAs and the reports and the metrics that they produce just maybe aren't as fully developed as they should be. Yeah. And the simple problem tends to be that they are focused on IT components and IT practices and IT processes and what IT does in lots of little things, rather than the whole bundle, the end-to-end value stream, as we now call it in ITIL 4. But the whole experience. So whilst individual components might be working, an application might be running, a platform might be available, but there's other things that have impacting on that mean that the service and the experience is not good. And we must then move on to thinking about how we measure that whole end-to-end process and experience, rather than just what they think, what IT thinks that they should be doing.
Yeah, I fully agree from our side on that one, because it's SLAs are measuring the process rather than what is it's like to use the services itself. But I think we could be talking about the traditional SLAs for this whole 15 minutes for sure. But let's maybe move on to talk about how we and how you especially see the future, and that's really interesting to see how you see the maturity of the industry and so on, when it comes to really measuring the outcomes of service management.
Yeah, and I guess one of the trends on measuring the outcomes has now been that experience level agreement. So what's like the first time you have heard about that, or how you've seen that kind of topic maturing?
Yeah, so I mean that's something that's come up in the last few years, and I think it's actually referenced in ITIL 4 as a term. It's not gone on into in great detail, but it's there. the idea being that you capture more around than the performance metrics, and you try and pull in experience. That could be customer experience, user experience, employee experience, the people who are actually working there as well. So I mean, I think these are all good things. The extent to which you can have an agreement on that is always going to be challenging. And so what I put in the article, I think, whilst I concur with the idea of the experience level agreement, I think it's very useful. I think we also just need to make sure we go further to include the outcomes. And I mean, I think that probably is the natural evolution of this, whatever we call it. I mean, we've talked about SLAs, we've talked about experience management. I'm talking about experience and outcome metrics, and that's the distinction for me, is that I'm not too bothered about how much of this is an agreement. I think it's important that people engage with their clients and users. I think it's important that they do have that they go through that process. What they come out with at the end of it will vary significantly, and I think what really matters is capturing a good broad cross-section of feedback, feedback being metrics, performance metrics, customer feedback, user feedback, employee feedback, and the sort of key one for me is the outcome one. Were we able to do the thing in our business that we need to do? Was the technology able to help? Rather than fussing about saying that we've got 99.6 availability on a service or platform, let's make sure that we've got 100% availability when it's needed. And that's the outcome bit that needs to be clear. What is the work that we are supporting? Do we provide healthcare? Do we provide insurance or pensions? Do we provide retail? All those things are the things that the technology is doing, and it's building that element into it as well that I was really starting to reference in that article.
Yeah, I think the whole outcome topic is something that we have been talking with Sami a long time, is that it really should be kind of the culture moving away from SLAs, not just that we change just to something, but it's totally starting to think about the outcome of what IT is providing. And one of our customers here said that he wants to start using this experience thing because he wants to understand the output of IT, not just the input of IT. So, and also kind of communicate that to the business side of the not just how much money are we spending on IT, which is the input of IT, but actually what is IT providing for the business.
Well, and just to go back to ITIL 4, I mean, we really did want to, a lot of the stuff that's in ITIL 4, the lower level stuff hasn't changed that much. Incident management is what it is, and it kind of works. And we've tried to elevate the place, I suppose, of service management so that it is seen as more strategic and it is based more around, and this thing of demand to value. I mean, that's the whole system. The whole service value system is based around going from demand, however that's captured, through some kind of washing machine, some kind of engine, and then at the end of that we've got something that we've identified as being value. And value can be a whole number of things, and not necessarily just financial or cost reduction, but it could be, we've delivered what our business needs in a way that it needs it, quickly, or a certain level of quality or whatever. We've achieved certain goals. We've done that in a way that is equitable for all our people, and in a way that has built a good relationship with our customers. Value is more than just, cost. So that whole thing about outcome has got to be clear, and that's the bit that we do need to still have the process that leads to an agreement. Put it that way. We get too bogged down in trying to write a document or looks like a contract. It doesn't really mean anything. Whereas actually, there's only maybe a couple of key things that we need to focus on, or that our customers want. And when we've got that, that's all if we've achieved that on a weekly basis, that's green. That's that's the kiwi fruit rather than the watermelon.
Yeah. You were also using this metaphor of the ship, so that's why the watertight, not just the watermelon SLA. So can you elaborate a little bit on that story about the kind of the metaphor?
What metaphor for what? Sorry, I didn't catch it when you said that.
So yeah, kind of having the ship. So it's nice that if the food is fine, but
Yeah, so I mean, the ship is sailing in a particular direction. There's lots of things involved in that. Require not just people running the ship and the sailing and the safety, but food and also you have a doctor, and there's lots of things that are required, and maybe that are not completely direct. The cook and the doctor don't steer the ship, so they don't get you to the destination, but they help you along the way.
Yeah.
All those things are elements, and making sure that we understand that the delivery of that product and that service, whatever it is, requires a number of different things to work together. And as long as we understand where we're going and that we're doing it together, this whole idea of a value stream and being part of an end-to-end process, I think is absolutely key. And it's something that's held us back, I think, for a long time, that we've had the kind of culture that says, well, we've done our bit, so everything's good. But actually, no, we all need to work together. And you see it from a service desk. If you go into an organization and they might be well set up, but they're not terribly well supported by other teams, and the other teams are going, well, that's service desk stuff. No, actually, you have to contribute to that as well. We're all in the same boat, as they say. So, you need to contribute part of that as well. It's not just the front line.
I guess some of you have something you want to say on that.
I was thinking that when I read that article about the ship, I was thinking the trips from Helsinki to Tallinn, for example, and thinking about those ships going there. There are fast ships, bigger ships, helicopters, and I was thinking that one ship for all those outcome needs that I have to get to Tallinn in 30 minutes, or I would love to spend 2 days, have good food, company, whatever, and that is my need of outcome. And I was thinking that maybe it's just a travel that would be even better in this metaphor. That you want to travel from place to A to B, and you select the way, to the tool or whatever to get there, and the understanding the business need would kind of be that you have to have a bit different service levels and ways of working with different needs. So if it's a critical thing, so kind of the challenge we have with our customers is that if we don't talk it very, very deeply with them, it's quite easy for them to start to think about that, okay, this is our net promoter score, happiness score target, 75. There is no point to think about that and make everything average, because you don't need that. You need to have 100 for those which are business critical from a business perspective. And those which are not, you have to do compromises. And that's kind of starting to really understand the business outcomes. What is critical for them is something where we see experience being the easiest way to get that understanding from the business. Of course, you have to discuss them. It's not the only metrics that you do. You discuss with the business to understand what they need. But that was kind of my thinking about that.
How do you guys see that now? Since IT's also role is to be more like innovator, kind of help the business develop things. What about kind of now, for example, during COVID, kind of questioning the whole, do we actually need the ship? Why don't we just use this online thing and actually get that outcome done? We do have like an old way of that. This is how we always done it. We fly planes and we meet people face to face. How do you think, Barclay, that you could use this outcome and experience based metrics to understand where should we actually innovate? And
I think as soon as we put up sort of examples of metrics, I've had this problem for some time. If I put up an example of what a agreement looks like or what a metric looks like, people tend to look at that and go, well, that's what it should look like, so we'll make ours like that. And the whole point of this process, you know, and you know, I go back to whether, to what extent we need an agreement. Well, we need something that clarifies what the expectations or the shared expectations are. It could just be a couple of lines, it could be a number, it could be whatever it is. But the process of getting there is probably more important, you know, of engagement, of sharing information and knowledge, sitting down and listening. I mean, that's the other thing I've always said about IT. We tend to go into these kind of meetings and discussions in shouting mode or solution mode and go, we can fix this. And actually, all you need to do is listen and let people talk. And that listening is a great relationship building feature.
Sorry, I have to tell a story. When we started this company, we did these group interviews with our customers, and we always took their lead in this area into the room for 3 hours without possibility to speak. So they had to listen to real stories from their end users 3 hours without teaching them how they really should work. They were really direct-necked during the meeting, but they said after that, that was one of the best meetings they have ever been because they were forced to listen.
Absolutely.
And that was really interesting to do that, because I knew that what we heard from the employees was something that was not allowed, how they worked, how they wanted to work. But then some of those practices they were using started to be real practices in the company when they learned that, okay, this is how they see it. This is the real critical things. They do whatever they need to do to get them solved, even without IT's help. That started a different kind of process of understanding the end users, and I really recommend that kind of work. We are not doing that anymore. Sorry if somebody wants to use us for that, but we don't have time for that. But there's a really great way of forcing people to learn.
It is. I mean, from a consulting point of view, it's the way that I've always approached. I mean, if an organization engages me to do a piece of work and they won't let me talk to some customers and get some feedback and then be able to present it back to them, I'm thinking, well, they're not really interested in doing this. I remember doing that years ago with a company where actually the CIO was part of the discussion, and I was briefing them beforehand. I said, please don't talk, don't just listen, don't go into solution mode, you know.
Yeah.
And it was kind of going pretty well. And then at the end, it was the CIO that cracked and sort of dived in about 5 minutes at the end of the interview. And I was like, oh no, just shh, you know, just be quiet. But the just going back to the point was the thing is that these things are not fixed, you know, that you need different levels of them. You need to recognize the diversity of expectation and without creating a monster of lots of that's why it becomes difficult, because you end up having lots of different bits of paper and documentation. But actually, you know, recognizing the difference and the sort of being fluid and being flexible about how you apply these will add so much value to whatever agreement or metric is produced. It's all about, you know, listening is just, you know, and we've not been very good at that in IT. I don't think.
Hey, getting back to the article, so and kind of what you just said. So you talk about this outcome and experience-based metrics. So, like an example, because now probably most of the listeners have never heard it before. What does that kind of include? Like, how does it differ from maybe from an XLA type of idea? Or
well, from an SLA or an XLA, it's usually focusing on, you know, and you may have a number of different versions of this depending on different departments, different customers, and so on, or different stages, even different time period. But it's taking customer feedback, it's taking employee feedback, it's taking the performance metrics that you currently produce, you know, all your incident management and telephony stuff. And then most importantly, it's taking the business outcome, the moment of truth as well. So part of that listening session is to say, right, well, we understand what's really important to you in your job, you know, that to get done. If it's a university, it might be to get the examinations produced or to have classrooms available on time, or, you know, If it's a bank, then it's, availability and working hours, or it's, transactions that are processed correctly or whatever. But you only hear that by talking to the business or listening to the business, hearing what they say is important to them. And actually then you just track, has that happened or not? Has that outcome been supported? Did you manage to process the exams? Were the classrooms available? Did these things happen? Rather than it being a kind of abstract availability that nobody cares about, what we care about is this particular event happening, and the IT guys understand that. They know that that's the important stuff.
Yeah.
So they make sure it happens for that. So combining those and usually using, weighting and that's the bit that you would agree with the customer, which is the most important element. So it may be that the key metric, the moment of truth, is 40% of the score, and your existing performance metrics are 10, or it may not be. It may be the other way around. It may be that customer satisfaction is the most important, or employee satisfaction.
Yeah.
That's the discussion that you can. I think it's quite useful to use that simple sort of balanced scorecard approach. Say, here's 4 things, and again, thinking of the ITIL 4 dimensions and so on. We're not just thinking about it from one perspective. We're thinking about it from several. And then you say, right, so is your feedback more important than we achieve the business outcome, or is the business outcome more important? That's all. That's the reality of it.
I like the name because it just says in plain English that outcome and experience, and it kind of also the same things that we discuss and kind of change the culture towards that one.
And
anything,
metrics.
Sami? Oh yeah, please.
Sorry, and it's metrics. It's not just an agreement. You can build an agreement around it, absolutely, but you can start using it to build up your metrics and your information, your data about the service. Sorry, Sami.
Yeah, I think that's I totally agree, because with different services, then you might have, if you create just one agreement that tries to cover all things, but for each service there's a certain outcome that they are supposed to achieve, and that's much more concrete for the IT people also to work towards. Sami, anything you still want to ask?
Yeah, I think we start to have used quite a lot of time already, so it's time to start to wrap up. But I really as well love the kind of the terms, outcome, and experience-based measurement, and this is really, I would say, basis of the experience management. And for me, if going back a bit to the agreements, I would think that in the future would be much better if also in the agreement it would be more about how the provider commits to use the experience rate data, rather than that this is exactly the target level. Target level should set only 6 months and then renewed again. So it's the principle of really having the practices around how you use these metrics. And
because it's like things happen like COVID, and then suddenly stuff happens, and if you try to just follow that we agree on this level, but it's actually trying to meet at that moment the needs of the people with the new experience that they are kind of having. So
and I have to say to that one that now doing this, I think you also wrote about that in the article. During the COVID time, the expectations have changed. On average, our customers or their end users are much more happier to the IT support than they were before COVID. And I believe mainly that is because the expectation level has changed. So it has been really interesting to follow up what happens in this industry during this COVID time, and I would have to say that the whole industry have done quite a great job compared to what you would maybe expect from this kind of a change.
Maybe like a last kind of question is that, how do you see the maturity on this? Like currently, so how many of the companies that you consult with are really interested in this, or how many are still like stuck with the old way of thinking?
I think, I've been doing stuff like this for really quite some time, in one form or other for over 10 years, really. I've still been doing it under the banner of trying to do SLAs well. And I think that's a lot of the language of that has changed. and the focus, with more around, and if you look at things like the SDI standard, where we've had lots of metrics and we've had employee experience and customers, and so people are doing it. They're doing it a lot more. I think obviously the maturity of their SLAs varies massively, and I was working last week with an organization where they had SLAs that were effectively 15 years out of date, but they had found ways of managing different parts of that, and they had, they were doing customer experience measurement, and they were doing some employee. They weren't bringing it all together, and I think a part of this is just helping people to move further up the maturity scale. Some of them are great at it. Some of them are still stuck on, no, we have to follow this response and fixed times and availability. I must admit, I don't find so many of them now that are doing that and don't realize that they need to change, or they've just gone so far past it. They've just gone, well, we can't do SLAs. We're not. That's where it's changed as well, because the relationship has thrown up the fact that they, and if you look at things like promise theory, which says, what you deliver is what you are effectively committing to. That has changed the game for a lot of organizations as well. But I think on the other side of that, the COVID experience has said, well, they've really got us out of a mess very effectively and very quickly. And since COVID, the organizations that I have worked for have all been in that position where the service desk and frontline operation is suddenly become much more appreciated, because people realize how much they actually do.
True. Yeah. I think that's maybe a good kind of way to end this thing. And if you want to hear Barclay talk, you could join the itSMF UK CX XLA forum on September 15th. It's going to be 10 a.m. UK time, and naturally an online event. But also Sami is going to be there. So if you want to catch both Sami and Barclay in the same show, that's a good day to book in your calendar. I'll put the link on the event on the show notes. If you're listening this after the 15th of September, then I'm sure that it's okay to reach out to you, Barclay, and have a discussion. So if people get interested, what's the best way of getting in touch with you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter under Barclay Rae, or you can just visit my website, which is barclayrae.com.
Okay. Do you have some other interesting resources that people can use on the website?
There's lots of free resources. Yeah, I mean, I created this model a few years ago, Goodness, which has got steps, and the first few steps of that are very much related to this, about engaging, listening to customers, and building service. Some definition of services.
We saw that we're watching it with Sami before we started the recording. I think that's maybe something that people should go and check out, that steps to the goodness.
The goodness step. Yeah, I mean, it still talks about ITSM. But it's still there. It's still all open source. So people can go and people do go on to it every week and pick up some of the documents and stuff.
Hey, thank you so much. And as we usually end this, we like to say that stay happy.
Definitely stay happy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.